Life on our planet has survived many shocks. When humans first arrived, this sweltering street in New Orleans was shrouded in cold fog as ice retreated from the far north. Now, you can pick citrus from the sidewalk. These drastic changes have always occurred periodically, and they weren't so kind to many species. So what's the key to success in a changing world? How do you ensure that your lineage sticks around no matter how many ice sheets or asteroids come your way? I found a pretty good answer to that question, and it can actually teach us a lot about our own history. I found the first piece of this puzzle hiking through the rainforests of Guatemala. Although the forests here were full of exotic plants and animals that were completely alien to me, what caught my eye was actually something incredibly familiar. You've probably seen something like it before. It's a bramble, a Rubus species, just like the blackberry or raspberry that you're familiar with, but here beneath howler monkeys and palm trees. It even had that familiar taste. While you might associate these plants with the hedgerows of England or Pennsylvania, they're actually one of the most widespread genera, or closely related group of species, in the world. Without any human assistance, the genus Rubus reached the high Arctic, Australia, New Zealand, and even the islands of the South Pacific. Even Hawaii, a tiny target that the vast majority of plants and animals could not disperse to, is home to its own Rubus species, the Hawaiian raspberry. There are over 1,400 species that we know of, and many of them are closely related enough to hybridize, giving us a wide range of flavors. Even in my home state of North Carolina, there are many species. My personal favorite is the black raspberry of the Appalachian Mountains, but I can count on the more typical blackberry nearly everywhere. At the coast, I've been amazed to see one growing in almost pure white sand, Rubus trivialis, which creeps on the ground instead of ripping up your pants like most species. Our local wineberry was brought here from Asia and is a serious invasive species, but it does, admittedly, taste amazing. Very few plant species have such a wide range, and the ones that do tend to have something in common. They have small fruit that easily allow birds to swallow the seeds, who can then disperse them across continents, even across hemispheres. In that way, the plants kind of have wings. And rapid dispersal across the globe is an excellent way to keep passing on your genes. If disaster strikes or resources fail in one area, your genes will probably be passed on somewhere else. But the benefits of bird droppings go beyond just broad dispersal. It's also how the seeds are dispersed. In very dry areas, birds tend to cluster around water sources like oases and riparian forests beside rivers, even dry arroyos where there may be groundwater to tap into. And these are the best places for a plant to start growing. In more humid areas, many birds spend their time at the edges of meadows, which ensures that the seeds sprout where there's sunlight, not in a shady forest. And just a handful of seeds in one bird can change entire ecosystems, even the evolution of other species. Today, the low desert of the American Southwest is dominated by creosote bushes. But they got here pretty recently, maybe around the same time humans did. Birds spread them up here from similar habitat in northwest Argentina, and since then, 2 different insects in the Southwest have specifically adapted to be able to eat their oily leaves. A fascinating example of rapid evolution, ultimately created by bird dispersal. Chilies, or peppers, benefit in another way from birds. All wild, undomesticated chilies have tiny fruits like these which evolved for bird dispersal. The spicy capsaicin burns the mouths of mammals like rodents, who would otherwise chew up all the seeds. Birds, however, can't taste the capsaicin, and they love these tiny pods. You can still find these wild chili plants in the deserts of northern Mexico and the southwest US, where they're collected and sold in markets as tepines, chiltepines, or Pekin chilies. But be warned, they pack a lot of heat. How do these people find the wild chilies? They simply find a good mesquite tree and look underneath it. That's because birds in the Sonoran and Chihuahuan desert stop to rest on the rare trees they find, dropping chili seeds below. And the wild chili plants benefit from the partial shade in these hot, dry regions. That's why botanists call these nurse trees. Like many plants, humans domesticated the chili beginning thousands of years ago to have larger fruit, and now those domesticated chilies rely on us to spread. And this really goes a long way in answering an important question. Why were so many of our most beloved fruits so tiny before we domesticated them, before we selectively bred them to have larger fruit? Shouldn't fruits be as enticing as possible to the animals that spread their seeds? Well, they are enticing to some of the best seed dispersers, the birds. It also explains why many fruits are poisonous to us. White baneberry, for instance, is one of the most poisonous plants in the woodlands of North America. Consuming these white berries can almost instantly stop your heartbeat, but the effect in birds? Absolutely nothing. This general trend, however, isn't always true. There are plants who have evolved to have fruit dispersed by much larger animals. There are loads of large fruited trees who benefit from African forest elephants, gorillas, and other megafauna spreading their seeds. But at higher latitudes, there are some examples of giant fruit who need larger animals to disperse them. This pawpaw in North Carolina is one such example. They taste amazing, but need to be eaten right off the tree. A much less enticing example is the Osage orange from the south central US. Native Americans considered this tree the best for making bows, and it was highly valued for its rot resistance. But we're really not sure what animal this bizarre fruit is supposed to appeal to. But maybe the most mysterious large fruit is the one that's so familiar to us today, the apple. It's a member of the Rosaceae family, which includes most temperate fruit trees like pears, plums, cherries, peaches, and apricots. Most of the species in the Rosaceae family have tiny fruit eaten by birds, but there are some exceptions. The primary ancestor of the domesticated apple is Malus sieversii, which originated in the Tian Shan Mountains of Central Asia, and it can still be found there, though its range seems to be shrinking. Even as a wild species, it has pretty large fruit. So what's supposed to spread these apple trees? Bears? Bison? Woolly rhinoceros? Neanderthals? We're not sure, but scientists do believe some sort of large mammals were the key. They would migrate long distances and they'd congregate in well-watered valleys, helping the tree to have a large range, which it unfortunately no longer has. Sadly, large fruits were probably more abundant once at temperate latitudes. The Rosaceae family has a number of species with large fruit, but it's exactly those species who have the smallest ranges today, and their ranges are still contracting. Yes, humans are growing large domesticated fruit, but their wild relatives typically have more genetic diversity, which is essential for crop breeding programs. That genetic diversity could save some of our favorite fruit from being wiped out by future diseases. But out of all of our culinary fruits, the Rubus species are the ones we have the least to worry about. And you may ask why our blackberries and raspberries have hardly changed over millennia. We've been selecting things like peach trees to have larger fruit for thousands of years, so why are our brambles still mostly like their wild selves? We have made some hybrids, thornless varieties, and slightly larger fruit, but that's only been in very recent history. Well, you could point to the fact that they're too delicate to be made much larger. They'd probably be squished instantly if they were plum-sized. But really, I think the answer is even more simple. This is the one fruit humans love that isn't like any other. We've never really had to cultivate them. They just pop up everywhere you have agriculture. People with agriculture make edge habitat everywhere they go, and so the brambles just follow. It's always just been an extra, free food you could go forage for in summer. And even in North America, we know that they multiply wherever you do controlled burns every few years. And this may have been one of the many incentives for Native Americans using fire on the landscape. So whether humans were foraging or farming, typically we had Rubus there with us. In that way, they've become ingrained into different cultures around the world. Maybe not our most important resource, but a reliable one, even in the most dire circumstances. Thanks for watching. If you find these topics interesting, consider subscribing. There will be many more to come.